Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to my channel. As discussed last week, I am not doing partners killing each other this week. I'm doing something far more harrowing, and I'm doing a father killing his child. So I apologise in advance. Today's case takes place in Australia in 2009, and trigger warnings for this video. It does involve a child passing, and I believe that's all I have in regards to trigger warnings. Content warning, as always, strong language. So this is the case of Arthur Philip Freeman, and we're going to get straight into it. This takes place at approximately 9:15 a.m. on the 29th of January 2009. Arthur was on his way to Melbourne after staying at his parents' house for the evening with his 3 children in the car, taking them back to their first day of school. It was their first day back after the summer holidays. Winter holidays, Christmas break, summer holidays. This would have been his daughter Darcy's first day at school. He planned to meet Darcy's mum at the school gates to give them her uniform for the day. Now, on the journey to Melbourne, it's around a 90-minute journey, and Arthur made a series of frantic phone calls to various different people on this journey. It was later revealed in court documents that one of these phone calls were to Arthur's sister, and he made no reference to what he was going to do that day. He was just stressing about the kids' school lunches and about Darcy being late to her first day of school. Another call was made to one of Arthur's friends in the UK, as he was going through a divorce with Darcy's mum, and he was concerned about losing visitation rights with his children. And he said that when he goes to court, he just feels like he's surrounded by angry women who don't care about him and him seeing his children. At 8:54 a.m, Arthur received a phone call from Darcy's mother, Peter, who was stressing about Darcy being late for her first day of school. They got into a bit of an argument over the phone, and Arthur ended the phone call by just saying, "Say goodbye to your children." Arthur then pulled over his Toyota into the emergency stop lane of the Westgate Bridge, took Darcy out of the backseat of the car and threw her off the 58-metre bridge, and just drove off. This was especially distressing for passers-by, because think about it, it's rush hour, it's the morning, people are getting to work, getting to school. There would have been an insane amount of witnesses to what he just did. So police started receiving a lot of calls from people who had witnessed Arthur doing what he did, but a lot of them weren't really sure what they saw, which is a good thing in a sense. They didn't know if he chucked a teddy off. They saw him throw something over the bridge, but they weren't quite sure what. Now, a passerby did have a dash cam. Thank God they didn't catch him actually throwing Darcy off the bridge, but they did catch him pulling over with his hazards on. Now, Darcy's poor brothers were actually in the car, so they had just witnessed this as well. Because they were so young, they didn't quite understand exactly what had happened, and they just kept pleading with him like, "Daddy, we need to go back. Darcy can't swim. We need to go back and get Darcy," which is just heartbreaking. Darcy did actually survive the fall into the water, and police and emergency services were straight onto the scene trying to get Darcy out of the water, which she'd now been in for about 15 minutes. Understandably, this was incredibly distressing and shocking for the workers that were there and had to help Darcy, but everyone kind of just had to put their emotions to the side because they needed to do everything they could to try and help Darcy. Paramedics worked on her for around an hour out of the water on the side of the bay before she was taken in an ambulance to hospital, where she had suffered extensive brain injuries, internal injuries and bruising. Arthur didn't drive his other 2 sons to school. He drove them to Commonwealth Law Courts, and I believe this was around 10:30 a.m. So police arrived and immediately took the boys off Arthur. Arthur was barely responsive at the time. He was quite shaken and upset by what he'd just done. So he was seen by a medical examiner, and he was deemed not fit to be interviewed at the time he was there. There is CCTV of him inside the court, but it is facing the back of him, but you can kind of see his shoulders moving, so it indicates he is crying. Now, what is horrendous is that Darcy's mother is still sat waiting outside of Darcy's school with her school uniform, ready for her to arrive and for her to take her in for the first day of school. So police actually had to go and tell Darcy's mum exactly what had just happened and take her to the hospital to go and see Darcy. When she arrived to see her, she had to make the most heartbreaking decision, and she had to take Darcy off life support. She was too badly injured to be able to live any form of life. At 1:45 p.m, Darcy, who was just 4 years old, passed away. Arthur and Peter were in the middle of a divorce and a custody battle, and the day before this had happened, Arthur had been denied access to his children. It was like planned visitation, which Arthur was very angry and upset about. And when he was leaving his dad's house that morning, his dad actually offered to drive him because he didn't feel like he was in a fit enough state, which must be so hard for them to kind of live with. I mean, you'd just blame yourself, wouldn't you? The case soon became a very high profile case just because of the nature of what had happened and because there were so many witnesses to this crime, including Darcy's poor brothers who were in the car. 2 years after Darcy's death, in March of 2011, Arthur went to trial. And the only reasonable explanation that everyone could come up with, that Arthur was obviously mentally ill, because what sane person could do this to their child? The fact of the matter is that Arthur killed his daughter as the ultimate form of revenge against his wife, Peter. And that was due to the custody battle that they were going through. He wanted to hurt her as much as possible and didn't think about anything else. He just wanted to get at his wife. So Peter obviously stood up in court and gave her evidence and gave a statement, and she knew that he had done it to get at her. So she came across really calm and polite in court because she did not want him to think that he'd won, that he had got to her. She wanted to appear like she was not unbothered, but she was not going to let him win. The defence put forward a case for Arthur that he was disassociating on this day, that he was not acting rationally, he wasn't in his right mind. But this was quickly, completely obliterated because it just doesn't make any sense. Because everything else that Arthur did that day was rational. He was clearly not dissociating. He was not driving erratically through traffic. And the main thing that came up was obviously he was seen on the dash cam. When he pulled into this emergency stop lane, he put his hazards on. Someone who's not thinking rationally would not think to put their hazards on, would they? The prosecution also made a point to let the jury know that Arthur had actually been seen by 5 separate psychologists, and they all theorised that Arthur absolutely knew right from wrong, and he knew that what he did to Darcy would result in serious injury or death, and that he was not unaware of this on the day that it happened. It wasn't just an episode or anything like that. He absolutely knew what he was doing. Supreme Court Judge Paul Cloughlin sentenced Arthur to 32 years with no parole. And Arthur showed absolutely no reaction to any of it. Nothing. He was just dead behind the eyes. He did show emotion once, and that was when the injuries were listed for Darcy. But other than that, just completely unbothered. And Arthur has never apologised for what he did or gave his version of events or any kind of explanation or defence for what he did. The trial took place for 19 days and the jury took 5 days to come to a unanimous verdict of guilty. And Arthur will be serving 32 years without parole. So his earliest release date is the 29th of January 2041, when he will be 67. So Supreme Court Judge Justice Colgan, I think I'm saying that right, said your attitudes to these matters remain self-centred. I regard your prospects of rehabilitation as bleak. One of the unfortunate features of this case is that others blame themselves, but you are responsible for it, nobody else. When Arthur received his sentence, he had like a really bizarre outburst and had to be like pulled down by like 3 guards because he just felt so sorry for himself. Ugh. Nothing winds me up more than when someone does something like this and throughout the whole trial they're completely emotionless, don't give a flying fuck, but it's all woe is me, oh my god, poor me, the consequences of my actions are coming, and they just feel so sorry for themselves when the sentence is read out. Like, what do you think you're going to get, a year for throwing your 4-year-old daughter off a 58-foot bridge? Are you breathe. And even more incredibly, Arthur deemed it appropriate to appeal his sentence. Fucking dick. Thankfully, that was rejected. I think the worst part about this case is that just so many people would have been affected by it. And it goes from, obviously, Darcy's mum, Darcy's brothers. They were obviously too young at the time to comprehend exactly what happened, but they still saw it. They still knew that she'd been thrown off that bridge. And as they get older, that will be something exceptionally traumatic. and like family members who were involved, the dad who didn't drive them to school that day, and even just the people driving past that saw it. Like it affects so many people, and the judge is completely right that there is so many people that would have blamed themselves for what happened, but it's no one's fault but Arthur's. Since Darcy's death, there's been a lot of barriers placed on either side of the bridge, and this has significantly reduced people taking their own lives on the bridge. So from something so horrendous has come something, I guess, positive, but it's still just such a hard case, and poor Darcy's poor mum, like it's just all horrible. So yeah, that was the case of Darcy Freeman and her horrendous father Arthur. That was depressing, wasn't it? Right, I need a positive thought now to boost the mood. Positive thought. This is why I need to do this, because after cases like this, I'm just like, oh God. Ooh. This isn't really a positive thought, it's just a brain baby that I've just had. So it's Mother's Day soon, which is great, because I found a really nice present for my mum, so happy days, sorted that already. But it is my first chance to do a themed case. Yay! It also means I need to find one and write a script, but that's okay. I will get around to that, because it's like, when is it? I genuinely can't see what the date is because it's so bright. It's like I've got like at least 10 days. So I will get on that. I've got 10 days at the time of filming this, by the way. So if you're watching it now, don't at me because I'm not wrong. So I will have my brain. So I will have my first themed case. That is my positive thought of the day. Christ, that was hard. Make good choices. I don't have a good sign off. Don't get murdered, and I'll see you next week. Bye. I honestly molt like a dog. What is that? I think I hate this guy. I can do that. Can I? Where's that ladybird gone? I want to help her, but she won't let me. Living his dart to court. Sorry. But the fact of the matter is that bloody hell, my stomach. Christ. Come on, Cashel. Fucking dick. That was depressing, wasn't it? My brain.